Good morning, Madam Chairs.
Hello.
The Education Committee will be reconvening in 15 minutes
Madam Administrator, are we ready?
via Zoom.
Sorry, Madam Chair,
The
can't,
Education Committee will be reconvening at 11:15
Sorry, are we ready to go, guys?
via Zoom.
Okay,
sorry, Madam Chair, when OLM makes an building-wide announcement, I can't hear myself think, I can't talk over it, so.
oh, I'm sorry.
My apologies. So, I'm about to hit the recording button and then we're ready to go.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. We're opening up the Appropriations Committee's public hearing for March 24th, 2023. Representative Walker, do you have any opening comments?
No, Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you. I want to hear what our public has to say, and thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry for not being there in person today, but I am, this is the kind of fun part. We have the budget that we go over, but actually listening to the bills that are coming before us and having the public hearings is where we learn a lot. So I'm looking forward to going over these bills and hearing from the public. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So, okay. So up first is Senator Kelly. I don't see Senator Kelly. Are you here, sir? When he comes in, we'll be hearing from him. Up next is Stephanie Thomas. Is Stephanie Thomas here already? When she comes, we'll listen to her. Mary Fortier. Mary Fortier, are you here?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm online.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, Chair, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Ranking Members, Senator Berthel, Representative Nuccio, and members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Mary Fortier. I'm the newly elected state representative from the 79th District in Bristol, and I'm here to speak in support of House Bill 5363, an act establishing an account to compensate families of law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty. I am aware that the proposed bill does not have a monetary amount, but that staff has researched our sister states in New England. I am not advocating a specific number, but I believe these families should not have to deal with financial worries on top of all that they have sacrificed. Thank you for your consideration and for all your work crafting this budget for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. You're all set, ma'am. Up next is Representative Turco. Representative Turco, the floor is yours, sir. Yep. Thank you. Appreciate that. Just make sure everybody introduces themselves.
Yes, State Representative Gary Turco, 27th District.
Good morning, Brian Whalen, Commissioner, Newington Fire Department, Newington, Connecticut.
Good morning, Fire Commissioner Frank DeMayo from Newington.
Hello, chairs, vice chairs, ranking members. I'm here today with two of the fire marshals, fire commissioners from the town of Newington to testify in support of House Bill 5250, an act establishing a grant program to reimburse municipalities for the cost related to the removal of PFAS from fire apparatus. I'll do a quick opening and I want to turn it over here to the experts. So as you mostly all probably know, because many of you were here in the legislature, we banned the use of PFAS in a lot of different situations, but that includes fire apparatus in our fire trucks. There was grant money that the state allocated to assist with the remediation, but it was only funded to a certain amount. And a lot of municipalities were not able through that grant program to be able to do the total remediation of all of their fire trucks with that money. And now they're left with bills of tens of thousands of dollars to complete the mandate of the removal, but don't have the necessary funds to be able to do it. And now that COVID relief dollars are drying up, municipalities like Newington need to cut funding to maintain services and not have to drastically increase taxes. And they are faced now with this dilemma. So let me turn it over to the commissioners to explain in more detail. Thank you.
Good morning and thank you for having us. One of the problems that we're having. How's that better? Good morning and thank you for having us. One of the big issues that we're having is it's approximately, depending on the cost fluctuations, because we know everything is going up every single day. The last cost analysis that we did for our trucks to remove the foam and to replace it with the new non-PFAS type foam, it's approximately $7,000 a truck. We have 5 trucks that are currently have 40 gallons each of this PFAS foam. So we're looking at anywhere from $35,000 to $45,000 for the remediation and the replacement of this new type foam. Smaller departments such as Newington with 30,000 people, our budgets are very small as it is, and we just don't have the money to do this remediation. The second issue that puts us in kind of a quagmire is we do have this stuff on our trucks, but we can't use it. And with the Berlin Turnpike, Route 9, and all of our mutual aid task force towns with 91, 84, we have this foam with these big trucks and tankers going through, and we're stuck not using this foam and having to call in other agencies that have already replaced this foam. Our other issue is, God forbid, if something happens with one of our trucks and we have a spill with one of these PFAS, with this PFAS foam. Now we're in with DEP, we're in environmental services, and it's a big issue. So the funding needs to get put in so that we can get this PFAS off our trucks and get the new foam put in. And we only have 5 trucks in Newington. I'm not sure what other towns have, but it is a big issue. There's just not the money on the volunteer departments. A lot of our money is being used right now to keep our volunteers in retention so that we can stay a volunteer fire department and not raise taxes in the town for a paid fire department.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen. Frank,
I'm all set.
you're all set. What is your last name, sir?
DeMayo.
DeMayo? So I just have one question, and then Senator Lesser has a question or a comment. My understanding is that the a fire training school in Eastern Connecticut was taking most of the trucks in and taking the PFAS out. And they said that they ran out of the funds to handle that.
Correct.
So is that where your trucks would have gone for?
Yes, we were scheduled for the trucks to be remediated, but I guess the funding dried up. So here we sit today.
And how much is that funding? Do you know, sir?
It's approximately to remediate the trucks. It's anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 per truck. And then it's about $1,600 to replace it with the new foam.
And how many trucks do you know?
We have 5.
And how many trucks do you know haven't been done? Do you?
I
if you
could
don't
not
know?
tell you that
Oh, okay,
number. I
thank
don't
you.
know that number.
Senator Lesser?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and it's good to see you, Mr. DeMayo, Mr. Whalen. So we don't you said two of your trucks still have, of your 5 trucks still have PFAS in them?
All 5 of our trucks currently have the PFAS foam in them. They're
So you
40-gallon tanks.
So you can't use those trucks right now?
We can use the trucks, we can't use the foam.
Got it. And we don't, is there a specific sort of bounce of going off of Senator Austin's question? I know this is an issue that you and I have talked about, Bubba, many times, but do you know how, we don't have a sense on how much additional funding is necessary?
Well, just to do Newington, I know is approximately between $40,000 and $45,000, and that will make us whole and have our whole fleet converted over.
Okay, good to know. And is there any sort of time limit if we were to use this? This isn't an ongoing requirement. We're just going to need to do this once and then be able to move on, right? So there's no.
That's correct.
So this is something maybe we could use unallocated funding for. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative DiCaprio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chiefs, for being here today. Being the former director at the Deep Emergency Response Group, just a question which I don't know. When materials are evacuated out of these the trucks, is there an extensive cleaning of as far as inside the tank chamber itself?
There is. That's why it's so expensive, because the tanks have to be tested and for the PFAS, and the rinsing of the tanks, it takes like 5 or 6 rinses of the tanks just to completely get all the PFAS chemicals out of it. So it is a lengthy process. Each truck is off the line for approximately a week for this to happen, just for the rinsing of the trucks.
All right, thank you, Chief. I think the committee, I think we probably need to get our arms around how big of a problem it is statewide too, but thank you for that and coming with your testimony today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? See, Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you tell me, sir, have you been provided any funding at all to help with the removal of this yet?
Newington has not been provided. I can only speak for Newington. I don't know about other towns, but we have not received any funding. We so far went out to our insurance carrier for the town of Newington and asked them if there was any programs that they had to get them off, to get this chemical off the truck, and they had nothing for us. The only thing that they could do for us, if God forbid there was a accident or a spill with the truck, then our insurance company would, be involved. But other than that, there is no programs for us to help remediate this issue.
And if I heard you correctly, I just want to make sure that I'm sure here. So we gave money to the fire training center to do it, but not to the towns. Is that what we've done?
Yes.
I believe the fire training center was taking the trucks from different towns in doing it, and that money did dry up.
Okay, so if we were to supply more money, would it be best to supply it to the actual training center or to the towns?
I think the best way to do it would be to supply the money to the specific towns so they can get it and get it done, and then they know they have that money earmarked to get it done.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, thank you, sir.
Thank you very
Appreciate all
much.
the work you do.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Up next is Secretary Thomas.
Good morning. And my apologies. I thought I was number 2 and I can't do that run as quickly as I used to.
You were number 2, but we moved fast.
Thank you. So good morning, co-chairs Austin and Walker, ranking members Nuccio, and I believe Berthel is there, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm here today regarding HB 6660. I'll be very brief because I've already met with the subcommittee, the Government Aid Subcommittee, and members of the working group to discuss our office's budgetary needs. And I thank you for your consideration. So today I'll limit my remarks.
Hold on a minute. There you go. You're all set.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To speak on funding for early voting, now that several related bills have passed out of the GAE committee. I cannot overstate enough how important it is that any early voting program be fully funded by the state. In my opinion, this isn't just a nice to have, but is required to ensure a safe election. Early voting, whether the legislature adopts 10 days or 14 days, will require over 1,000 poll workers statewide daily. In a couple of the bills, that number could be much higher. And I would like to also remind members of the committee that there are at least 2 elections each year, although many more would be included in some of the bills. The labor cost alone, I believe, makes the point for me, but there are many other expenses such as extra ballots and envelopes to be printed, since we don't know how many people will avail themselves of early voting. Training materials have to be developed and administered to make sure all of these poll workers have the training necessary for a new program. New storage equipment for some towns so that ballots are secured safely, technological upgrades in some towns to ensure that they have access to the voter file to make sure people are not double voting. And then obviously the public education component that will be required to let residents of Connecticut understand how early voting works and how they should go about it. My office continues to work with the Office of Fiscal Analysis to provide as much information as possible so that they can accurately estimate the costs. And I will continue to do so along with working with your committee and the rest of the legislature to help however I can. So I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I promised I would be brief, but I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Appreciate you coming over.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Up next is Representative Pavros DeGraw. Up next is Representative Cheeseman. Up next is Mayor Murado. Mayor?
Yes, good morning, committee chairs and members. My name is Lisa Murata, and I am the mayor of Rocky Hill. I am here to oppose House Bill 1214, and I want to just preface my statement that I strongly believe that pilots should be fully funded. However, I oppose this bill because it seeks to create a task force to determine if and how that should happen, and therefore it necessarily creates another delay in fully reimbursing municipalities like Rocky Hill that rely on this funding. So I have some numbers to share with you to put into perspective how detrimental the current practice of partial funding is to local budgets and how unsustainable the expectation of us to absorb significant losses like this on an annual basis is, especially when we take into consideration the totality of unfunded mandates that exist today. So Rocky Hill is a small town of about 21,000, but we happen to be the fastest growing municipality in Greater Hartford. We have 29 properties that qualify as pilot. The total assessed value of those properties in 2021 was over $158 million. If we were able to tax those properties, we would generate over $5.4 million. And under pilot, if we did receive the 45% of those dollars, and I'm looking at 2021 year, that would have generated a total of $2.4 million in revenue for my municipality. But instead, in 2021, Rocky Hill received a mere $700,000, which was a sizable loss of $1.7 million for just 1 year. And so this year, the state has a budget of $3 billion. That number, I believe, may have even grown a little bit. And if there has ever been a year for it to fully fund pilot, the question then becomes, why isn't it this year? And year after year, we're told that municipalities over rely on property taxes. But unlike the state, we generally do not have the ability to generate alternative sources of revenue. So failure to fund pilot yet again this year, and to delay the full funding to create a task force perpetuates a growing gap in local budgets. And it's pulling taxpayer dollars away from needed services to fund state initiatives. In fact, Rocky Hill could significantly reduce its mill rate if the state would simply fund the existing the programs that exist today, like pilot. And that's the simplest, most direct way that we can be helping our taxpayers. Roughly right now, there are about 1,400 unfunded mandates on the record, and that's according to the Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations. And it's the totality of the unfunded mandates that is crippling individuals, families, and businesses. And it's really unfair that the municipalities are forced to fund state initiatives so then the state can then spend that money elsewhere without the repercussions, while the local leaders are forced to raise taxes because we can't afford any longer to balance that burden. And so I want to be perfectly clear that I definitely applaud lawmaker efforts to support communities with laws that are benefiting nonprofits, that support early voting, that reduce or eliminate the car tax, but please consider the negative financial impact the totality of these initiatives have when you couple them with the failure to fully fund pilot, right? Particularly when there's little or no reimbursement. And on top of that, we're hearing that there possibly may be other programs that will not be fully funded. So in conclusion, I just want to say that creating a task force in 2023 in lieu of fully funding pilot when there is a huge state surplus simply perpetuates the financial hardship on residents, especially folks on a fixed income like our seniors. So please fund the programs fully that exist on the books, the way they were contemplated to be funded, and do not support programs that lack a defined and secure funding mechanism. And so I thank you very much for your time, your thoughtful consideration, and for everything that you do.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I have a couple questions. One, I just wanted to make, which bill were you talking on? 1213 or 1214?
I am talking on 1214.
Okay, so right before that is a bill 1213. And first I'll talk on 1214. We have it as looking at fully funding pilot. That's $361 million for in addition to what we already pay for pilot. So that would add another $361 million in expenses to our budget. And the reason why we continue to look at pilot is because we're always interested in finding ways to provide municipalities additional dollars. I was a former first selectman. I recognize the components of funding for municipalities, but that would add, just so you understand the whole picture, it's not just the $1 million for Rocky Hill, it's $361 million. Before that is a bill 1213, which is an act concerning the PQAP fund. And that is relative to providing another 80 million in that fund, and that would bring us up to what we were fully funding on that program, but a much easier reach, in particular seeing as we had approved additional revenue resources coming in through the gaming industry into that fund. So do you have a position on 1213, or is that immaterial to your town?
No, I didn't come to take a position on 1213. My biggest concern is the fact that the pilot, we don't get that anywhere close to the 45% that we should be getting. And I appreciate, Senator, that other municipalities are similarly situated.
Yep,
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to make sure you understood that we have to look at the whole picture and
I understand that, of course. Thank you.
61 million is a little bit beyond our capacity this year, but we want to keep it on the forefront of discussion because we actually believe that municipalities should be fully funded, but we have to live within the confines of our budget, like you have to live within the confines of yours. But I appreciate you coming, and I certainly appreciate all the hard work you do in your town. Again, thank you very much, Mayor. Are there any other questions or comments? Representative Johnson?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony regarding pilot. I represent one of the towns that has a huge amount of pilot, but we also have a number of properties that are not in the pilot statute, but because of the statutory laws that say we can't tax those properties as well. I just wondered if you had properties like that in Rocky Hill.
There is a growing list, it seems to be, of properties that are being added to the exemption list, you would call it. That's what you're asking?
Yeah, the property.
I think some of them may refer to nonprofits. I believe, though, it's difficult for us to always determine the owners of those and whether, in fact, they are a nonprofit. But I do understand that there is a growing list of properties generally that are being added to that exemption list for purposes of pilot.
No, they are not in pilot. They were just exempt.
Right, exempt, exactly, yes. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, Mayor, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. Representative Cheeseman.
Good morning, Chairs Walker and Austin, ranking members Berthel and Nuccio, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. I think this is actually the first time I've testified before you. So I'm here today. I thank you for hearing my testimony in support of House Bills 5363, an act establishing an account to compensate families of law enforcement officers killed in line of duty, and 5519, an act requiring performance-based budget review. With regard to 5363, and I know there will be differences of opinion on this committee and throughout our chamber, but I do think we have seen in the past few years a feeling among law enforcement and their families and among others in our community that we have not given them the respect they deserve, whether it's through legislation, whether it's through comments and action. I don't think anyone here would disagree that they put their lives on the line every day, that when they leave the house in the morning and when they come back at night, they have the risk, their families face the risk that they will never return. And those families will have to deal with the aftermath. We need to do everything in our power within our ability to support them, to support those families when they're killed. I sat in judiciary and heard so many bills with regard to supporting criminals. Let's support the people who protect us. Let's support their families. A number of states do have funds that provide payments to families of officers killed in the line of duty. As we spend millions on rehabilitation for criminals, let us spend and set up a non-lapsing account to support the families of the people, the men and women who give their lives in the line of duty. I would respectfully ask that we also look at including other first responders as other states do, firefighters, EMTs. Let us set up this account to protect their families. Money can't make them whole again, but it can help them get through the initial stages and deal with the finances as they arise. With respect to 5519 in 2017, we codified in our statutes in section 33B the need to look seriously at our programs and set up a results-based accountability. We need the metrics, we need to know, as good stewards of taxpayer dollars, are we getting the bang for our buck? Are we getting the return on investment? Indeed, Connecticut joined Results First with Pew and MacArthur that was to look at every department and identify programs that worked, where savings could be made, and which programs weren't working, and how we needed to make them better. Another requirement of that section was the creation of a committee made up of both finance, revenue and bonding and appropriations, as it were a first ever Ways and Means Committee. Having just left a finance public hearing, the fact that we operate in a silo without knowing what's being spent on one side and what's being produced in revenue on the other side seems insane. So again, I respectfully urge this committee to take up 5519 and 5363 to help the families of our fallen officers and give them some financial security, and to help the taxpayers of this state know that the pennies they pay to us, we are spending in the most informed and effective manner possible. And I want to thank you so much for hearing my testimony today. And with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Are there any questions or comments? I have one question for you, Representative Cheeseman. I noticed that you talked about two policies, but I didn't see you raise any interest in 1213, which is about the Mashantucket Pequot Fund. You come from the same neck of the woods I do. Do you have a position on the Pequot Fund being fully funded to where its maximum?
I think when we
was?
make commitments to our municipalities, it's very important that we keep those commitments.
And would you say that you then agree that we should bring the Pequot Fund back to the level it was and fund our municipalities, in particular those towns that have the greatest sort of consequences as a result of those two large businesses?
That makes a lot of sense to me, Senator.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Oh, wait a minute. Representative Nuccio has a question.
I'm not sitting right next to you, so I can't, like, sorry. I just want to thank Representative Cheeseman for coming forward. This has been a new process for me, being ranking on Appropes, and I'm really enjoying the subcommittee meetings and spending time going over like how we're making these decisions. And the couple of the things that I've found and that I've seen have been we don't have a lot of results based. I know we've been in meetings and we're talking about, like, for instance, we're looking at the grant program that we created last year for 5001, which is a great grant program. And there's some talk of some people that they want to put more money in it, but we don't even know how the grant program is doing, right? And I think we need to start looking at the expenses of the state and the programs. We're looking at DCF, which had in the last 5 years anywhere between 13 and $60 million in lapses. And there's looking at cutting some numbers and programs, but we don't even understand why, what's going on. It's hard to get that information from a lot of these departments. And I think it's just the natural friction between the legislature and the executive branch and the stuff that's happening. But for us to be the best legislators that we can be and to really create programs that are helpful to our residents, we have to understand if what we're doing is producing the results that we want. And we have to be willing to acknowledge that we need to tweak something or we need to look at something so we can make sure that we're spending the money in the best and most reliable way. And I think this 5519 to me kind of does that. I was on finance last time, and I'm gonna honestly say I really like the Appropes role better. So I'm wondering, everybody's laughing at me now, but it's true. I'm wondering, Holly, Representative Cheeseman, from your opinion, how would you see this really helping? Because I do think the other thing that we miss here is like a true ways and means, like trying to combine the revenue and the expenses to show how we work together in this. So since you're on finance and I'm on Appropes, I'm wondering if you could just maybe elaborate a little bit on how you would see this being beneficial to the state budget process.
Well, I think it's difficult to operate in a silo where if this committee is saying we're going to spend X amount of money and finance is not creating the revenue or doesn't know the revenue that's needed to reconcile the two. But, you know, having just come from the finance public hearing, one of the things we're looking for, we're constantly being asked to create more tax credits. Well, what are we getting in return for that tax credit? If a business or an industry tells us this will allow us to expand and create more jobs, well, show us the data. Where, if we haven't done it in this state, New York, Massachusetts, Ohio did this, and they saw that the construction industry increased apprenticeships by 50%. And as a result, you know, in terms of revenue, the state made X. We have the ability to get the data, but I don't think even when we have the data, we use that data necessarily to make the informed decisions. And if we don't have the data, we should make that part, embed that in every program, that after X amount of time, if we set up a program without knowing what we want to achieve and how we will measure success, how will we ever know if we're spending tax dollars in the right way? And I think combined committees, by working together, by knowing we want to spend X, where's the revenue coming from? One makes perfect sense. I mean, if you're running your family, if you're running a business, you can't say, I'm going to build a new addition without identifying where the money's going to come from to pay that addition. Or if you're a family, I want to take a big vacation or buy a new car. Where is that money going to come from? So it seems that piece seems a no-brainer. And again, as good stewards of taxpayer dollars, surely we should know that if we're spending the money, we're achieving the results we want. Because if we're not, let's put it into programs that do achieve the results we want. As I
Thank
say,
you.
like a
Yeah.
no-brainer to me.
Thank you for that. You know, it's the accountant in me agrees with you. You know, the first thing you learn in accounting is there's two sides of every T account, you know, debit and the credit side, and they always have to be in balance. So it was a little weird for me when I first came to legislature to realize that we don't do that. So this is definitely, you know, I'm a little biased because my name is also on the top of the bill, but I think this is a really good thing that we should look at and focus in on. Sorry, excuse my dogs. But thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the question. Thank you.
Another question for you, Representative Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize for not being there today. But thank you, Representative Cheeseman, for pushing forward on this bill, and thank you, Representative Nuccio, because if you go back to when this bill was recommended and worked on, it came from Appropriations, and it came from our group, because we felt that the only way we could get more money put into programs that are really effective in the communities that we all want, as opposed to just paying off different people in silos, we wanted to have a cost-based analysis. We want to be able to see, are the kids, are the adults, are the people that are using the services better off in what we're doing? One of the other things that we learned in doing this was that first, all agencies in the state of Connecticut contract out. They don't do direct services. That's something that people don't realize. And yet they don't all have what's called quality assurance in their agencies. When we ask questions of agencies, so what is this, if there's a reduction in their line item, we ask them, how is this reduction going to affect your agency? We get sort of quiet. And when we ask if we're investing in a certain area, what is this going to do for us? We get a quiet. So you begin to wonder how decisions are made in many of the areas, because we can't get the information, and we're not trying to stop any activity. All we're trying to do is understand it and make sure that we're going in the area that we need to do in order to affect change. I'm very happy to hear this. We've been working on this for a long time, and the agencies somehow shut down on us and did not provide us with all the information we needed. So maybe this year is the year that we're going to get that transparency and that cooperation, because it will help us to make sure that Connecticut goes in the directions that are really necessary for the community. So I definitely support it. because that bill in 2017 was mine. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I did just wearing my other hat at the Niantic Children's Museum. I write grants to foundations all the time. And I have to do a grant report. And in both the application and the report, it says, what are your goals? What are the outcomes? How will you judge success? And when you give the report, you have to respond to the things you said you were going to achieve in the end. And if you can't demonstrate that success, if the program hasn't worked, it's how are you going to tweak it to make it work? Or we're not going to fund this again. You said you were going to do X and you were not able to do X. So how are you going to change the program to deliver the results you told us you were going to do? And as I say, maybe I'm biased because I have to do that all the time, but I don't think that's too much to ask from our agencies. And it's what the residents of Connecticut want, because they believe we should provide things that are important to them, but do it in a way that gets the best bang per buck and that we're paying attention every day. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? You're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Going on to the general public now. We do have a couple of people that might pop in that are on the public officials list, but we'll start with the general public, and the general public has 3 minutes. Evilise Correa. Evilise Correa. Amy Kinstead. I see Amy, you're on here.
Hi. Good morning, chairs, vice chairs, ranking members, and esteemed members of the committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my thoughts regarding House Bill 5531, an act concerning the Childhood Cancer Awareness Account. I'm here today regarding childhood cancer in Connecticut, and I'm representing the American Childhood Cancer Organization, known as ACCO, which is a national childhood cancer organization. And as a two-time childhood cancer survivor, I'm also here on behalf of the entire childhood cancer community. When I was 7, I was thrown into the world of childhood cancer for the first time. Chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, and days spent in the hospital became all too familiar for me. While I'm currently doing well and better than anyone imagined, my journey with cancer is not over. It doesn't end when the hair comes back. Truthfully, I don't remember a life without cancer. I don't remember what it's like to not have to worry about scan results. I don't remember what it's like to not have to worry about future health problems I will inevitably have to face. I don't remember what it's like to live without the trauma from treatment. The fact is, cancer has changed me forever. Yes, my hair is back and I look healthy, but that doesn't mean everything is back to how it was before. The fact is, I'm 16 and have received some of the most toxic drugs available, have been exposed to levels of radiation most never will, and have faced more than enough traumatic experiences for a lifetime. Not to mention, I also had to have my entire left lung completely removed and face living the rest of my life with half the lung capacity as the rest of the world. Cancer will always be a part of my life, whether I want it to be or not. There are only 7 states that appropriate funds at the state level for pediatric cancer. This compares to all 50 states that have dedicated funding for adult cancer research. Connecticut has allocated $11,000 over 5 years divided between the 2 children's hospitals for pediatric cancer research. That needs to change. Kids are our future, and as one of the lucky ones, it is my duty to fight for change. I'm forever thankful to be one of the ones who survived, and I'm determined to make an impact for those fighting today while honoring the ones who fought yesterday. I'm here for every kid who has been forced to enter the reality of pediatric cancer. Let's make a difference for them with Bill HB 5531. Thank you for your time and consideration today. I'll stand by for any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Amy. And I just want to thank you for being brave enough to come forward and telling us your story. That's really impactful, and I appreciate your comments. And I hope that you're taking care of yourself. And I'm so glad to hear that you're doing better. We have a couple of questions. Representative Dathan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And Amy, it's good to see you again. I appreciate your advocacy and your bravery to stand up and tell your story and tell how these funds would be so important in fighting childhood cancer. And I appreciate the level of information that you've provided the committee, and I look forward to continuing this dialogue as I agree that this is something that's very important. So thank you so much, Amy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Nolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amy, I'd also like to thank you for coming before us. Your courage is admirable. And your information that you provided is greatly appreciated for us to be informed more in regards to some of the things that you have gone through. I wish you well, and we'll put you in prayers for continued good health. And once again, thank you for coming before us.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Representative Porter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to join the chorus of what has already been said. Amy, I want to thank you first for coming before us and presenting in such a awesome way. I'm also glad that you're doing well. And I just want to commend you on fighting the good fight on behalf of the others that are coming behind you. I think that's very important. And you have certainly set yourself as a leader. So thank you. And I also will be keeping you in my prayers for continued good health. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Amy, thank you very much. Up next is Olivia Rinks. Olivia Rinks. Up next is Carol Rizzullo. Carol Rizzullo.
Yep, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Carol.
Thank you, committee members. My name is Carol Rizzullo. I live in Guilford and I lead Connecticut Shoreline Indivisible, Safe Vote CT, and I'm the Connecticut coordinator for Center for Common Ground. All of these groups fight seriously for voting rights. Voting and elections have to be funded and fully funded. I applaud Speaker Ritter, Senator Looney, Governor Lamont, Secretary of State Thomas, former Secretary of State Merrill, and the legislative leadership for all of your hard work and unapologetic support of early voting. Additionally, I applaud your collective leadership for paving the way for Connecticut voters to change the course of history in our state on Election Day, November 8th, 2022. As you undertake the work of appropriating funds for the proposed legislation to implement early voting, I urge you to fully fund Connecticut's first ever early voting in-person voting system by April 2023 to give town officials the time to incorporate any budgetary changes in advance of the 2023 municipal cycles. As I have heard from several electeds at this point, we are one or two headlines away from people not trusting the electoral system. This has got to be fully funded, well funded, and I understand it's a lot of money. Connecticut voters deserve a baseline of at least 2 weeks of early voting to include evening and weekend hours, with the funded option for higher population towns to provide multiple locations in addition to the office of the registrar. It's going to take a lot of coordination and a lot of work to get it done in time to be able to begin early voting in 2023. But that's what must be done, and it must be done with urgency and full funding. Furthermore, I'm asking this committee to appropriate full and permanent funding for the Connecticut Voting Rights Act. As a retired clinician, I'm a data-driven adult. We need well-funded databases. It's absolutely required to collect true data on voter suppression tactics. We need solid legal tools for affected voters and communities to be able to fight against these tactics. A strong pre-clearance program to identify and fix the problems before they lead to disenfranchisement. Legal tools so that voters who face intimidation at the polls and whose voices have been historically suppressed are able to have actionable recourse, and of course, expanded language access for non-native speakers. Our non-native English speakers. Our state should stand up proudly for equal democracy, and it's time for Connecticut to become the leader in all aspects of voting rights. It's time to fully fund these voting expansion efforts. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and of course, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you, ma'am. Your thoughts are heard.
Thank you so much.
Up next is Jay Kelly and Mark. Okay, Mark, tell me how to say your last name. Scrivener. Scrivener.
Thank you.
Go ahead, guys.
Introduce yourself first. Good afternoon, Jay Kelly, City of Bristol Fire Department. I'm going to let Chief Scribner go first. I was on the docket, but Mark's going to go ahead of me.
Good morning, Appropriations Committee Chairs Walker and Austin, Vice Chairs Exum, Paris, Hartley, Ranking Members Nuccio, Berthel, distinguished members of the Appropriation Committee, and I'd like to recognize my own state rep, Susan Johnson, as well. It's good to see you. My name is Chief Mark Scrivener from the Willimantic Fire Department. I'm here as president of the Connecticut Career Fire Chiefs Association. Joining me is Master Mechanic Jay Kelly from the Fire Mechanics Association. Behind me in the audience is John Carew from the State Firefighters Association and others colleagues of mine. Together, we represent members of the Joint Council of Fire Service Organizations, the largest professional fire service associations in the state of Connecticut, spanning volunteer and career firefighters, as well as labor and management. We are here, along with many of our colleagues in the audience, to thank the committee for raising House Bill 5250 and express our unified support for this proposal. The Joint Council has spent a significant amount of time in partnership with DEEP and our own State Fire Administrator, Jeff Morissette, understanding the hazards of PFAS chemicals in our firefighting foam. While we defer to our colleagues in DEEP to discuss the science and technical issues, we are acutely aware that PFAS chemicals are hazardous to health and the environment. These PFAS chemicals have been routinely used in firefighting foam, as you know, which is still in many cases carried on apparatus today here in Connecticut, including in my own community. The goal and priority of the Connecticut Fire Service and other stakeholders is to remove the firefighting foam from the apparatus, decontaminate the foam tanks, and properly dispose of the PFAS foam. Many communities have recognized the health and environmental hazards, as well as the liability, should this be intentionally or unintentionally spilled. Accordingly, our communities are anxious to enact measures, very anxious to enact measures to reduce this risk. We are appreciative of the previous state funds that were allocated to support the mitigation efforts. However, based on the significant costs that were discovered in the process, funding was used up quickly, leaving many of us to bear unbudgeted and expensive mitigation fees currently. The estimated costs, you heard earlier of an estimate of $7,000. The numbers that we're hearing from our colleagues range anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000, depending on the types of mitigation efforts that are offered per apparatus. Each community, as you know, has a varying ability to handle this level of unexpected costs, but it's a statewide issue that we all face, and it will have or has already negatively impacted many municipalities. As the committee considers the final language and funding necessary to reimburse communities for these unbudgeted costs, we at the Joint Council recommend that the legislature consider the following. Ensure non-restrictive funds are available for communities who have not yet incurred these costs, and reimburse those communities who have already proactively expended funds for mitigation. Ensure that the funds that you allocate are appropriated for removal of foam from the fire apparatus, decontamination or rinsing of the foam tank and piping. Proper disposal of this product and materials include pails or stored containers of the foam in fire stations. Varying and likely inevitable market price fluctuations given our current inflationary cycles for disposal. Logistical costs, including apparatus movement to the vendors or locations, and personnel costs. And last, hold participating communities harmless from fines and cleanup costs in the event of inadvertent spill. Finally, while we defer to State Fire Marshal Jeff Morissette and our DEEP colleagues to assist with a more comprehensive assessment of the funding, a voluntary survey of departments indicated there are at least 385 apparatus which still have PFAS-containing foam in our firehouses today in Connecticut. We recognize that the fiscal impact of this bill is significant, yet we urge the committee to consider this a critical statewide issue warranting funding assistance. The Joint Council is grateful to the Appropriations Committee for raising this important legislation. We'll take any questions that you might have for us.
Are you all set, sir?
Want to read your statement?
Good morning, everyone. As stated before, my name is Jay Kelly. I'm here representing the Connecticut Fire Mechanics Association, the City of Bristol Fire Department, and the Joint Council. To go along with what Chief Scrivener stated, this topic is very important to us, and we appreciate being brought forward. This has been many years in the making. Following DEP's recommended removal, cleaning, and rinsing process will allow our fire engines to be brought back to having usable foam systems. Currently, we can only use PFAS foam for a life safety incident. While these vehicles will never be able to be completely 0% PFAS free, removing the 100% level of PFAS is a huge step in being environmentally responsible. To clarify something, this is a DEP approved process of draining the tank, 3-step rinse process, and then refilling the truck with a PFAS free chemical. Working in partnership with Mass DEP, a work group had third-party testing of PFAS free listed foams performed. After reviewing those findings, the manufacturer was chosen, and then the removal, cleaning, rinsing was done on 2 of the state of Connecticut's regional foam trailers, and new foam was installed. We ask your help in assisting the fire departments within the state to be able to do the same. And I must add that there will be some other fire departments testifying here today on behalf of this. I thank you for your time. If you have any questions.
Thank you. And I just want to, if I could, find out, Chief, if, is it 385 pieces of equipment that need to be cleaned or 385 departments? What did you say?
385 apparatus.
Pieces of apparatus?
Please don't hold us exactly to this number. It's a voluntary survey that we did through the State Fire Administrator's Office. And this is our best estimate of how many apparatus currently carry PFAS foam.
And is all of this being done at the Eastern training school?
So as I understand it, the Eastern School was the site of the initial test cleansing of the regional foam trailers and some early testing of apparatus. Whether that location would be continually used is not clear to me. It sounds like the state is, through the State Fire Administrator's Office and DEEP, is open to allowing communities to seek out a private vendor to do the decontamination at a fire apparatus vendor in the community. That may be a more efficient way of doing it. It may be something you wish to poll the State Fire Administrator a little bit more about.
Right, and if we, so I would be worried if each individual fire department was doing it individually, because I'm not certain that the price, you don't get as much for the price point if you're doing it that way. And by my, according to a speaker before you, it was about $1,600 to replace the foam with non-PFAS foam. And the cleaning apparatus, I calculated it out at $10,000 per vehicle, give or take. And that would be $3,850,000. Is that what you're thinking the scope of the problem is?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is having spoken to the State Fire Administrator, who's been in touch with DEEP, they still are looking for a $20 million allocation for the entirety of we're speaking today for fire apparatus. There's a bigger problem than just fire apparatus, and DEEP has a better handle on what other issues face us in terms of PFAS foam. But when we pushed back on that $20 million amount, through the State Fire Administrator, the DEEP folks were pretty insistent that that was the cost analysis that they had made. So what the rest of that goes to, again, you may wish to reach out to them for.
Right. So I can't deal with every problem that's out there. You have a specific problem that has to do with apparatus that's dispatched on a relatively often, at least once a week, if in some of the smaller departments, and probably at least once a day in some of the larger departments. And so if we have a vehicle that is being dispatched to handle an emergency situation, the fact that every time you put yourself on the road, there's an opportunity for your vehicles to be in some way hit or in some way mishandled, not by the firefighter themselves, but by an action of someone else, even if it's accidentally, which could cost the PFAS foam that is currently on that vehicle to be released. And that's my concern, is that, I mean, DEEP has not asked us for any money relative to that. They may have talked to the governor about that. I don't know. They may have gone to finance, revenue, and bonding and talked to them about that. I don't know that either. But my calculations lead to just dealing with the vehicles that have PFAS in it. It's a $3,850,000 number. Is that about what you have?
I agree.
To go along with the chief's point, yes, we are just talking strictly fire apparatus.
Right.
There are other ancillary vehicles, be it a small UTV that's used for brush fires, be it some of the large fire boats that are down along the shoreline, and some on the river. But there are some big fire boats on the shoreline.
We haven't dealt with the fire extinguishers yet.
Fire extinguishers, that's why DEP gave us this higher number.
Yeah.
We're just talking fire trucks right now.
Right. That's all I'm talking to. Because again, I can't deal with every problem that everybody has. I can deal with things a little bit at a time. So, so I come up with $3,850,000. Let's see if I have anybody else that has any questions. Senator Hartley?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for being with us. The ubiquitous PFAS issue is surrounding us everywhere we go. And so truly, this is probably the tip of the iceberg, but to the chairman's point, it's going to have to be iterative and probably over a long span. I do agree with the fact that our firefighting vehicles are probably right at the front of this issue in terms of, starting to chip away at it because of the utility, because of the mission and so forth. I guess I'm just curious if there are any federal funds that you know of that perhaps other states may have, tried to integrate into their remediation plans.
I'm not aware of any.
Nor am I. We're just doing our research on this product right now within our state for our fire service.
And I believe this is in response to an EPA rule with a allowable level, which is really low. And so I'm assuming every other state and every other fire apparatus in the country is facing the same problem.
Yeah, this is massive. And I'm just curious if, there's anything on the federal level in terms of, putting together this phase out, phase down of, this everywhere chemical.
Please keep in mind that we are banned from using our PFAS foam systems unless it's life safety.
Right.
We can't use it for vapor suppression. Some of the other chemical driven fires cannot use it.
Yeah. And also we have the same issue in our airports too. And we kind of witnessed what's going on there. Thank you very much for your work. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative DiCaprio, followed by Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief, for being here as a living next door in Lebanon. So, and you did answer the question as far as the number of vehicles, what we estimate is out there right now. It is very concerning that what you're saying about just life safety application. And again, it's Senator Austin's comment about the potential risk of another incident from another release is very, very concerning. So it's something we need to act on quickly, in my opinion. Well, I would just like to say, I would encourage our committee to really look at this and to try to do all that we can to help address this problem. And we can certainly reach out to Mr. Morissette too, to see what he has. But the question I do have is there anything going back to the manufacturer of the product for that you're aware of, taking back material from the manufacturer of the No.
I'm gonna go out and say no. We've already done stage one, which was loose product pickup. We keep this stuff stored in the firehouses, usually in 5-gallon drums. So I know in Bristol, we hosted a pickup site, all local towns, but that was by the contractor. It was Clean Harbors. They then took it, and I believe it went to Pennsylvania, and it's buried in the ground.
For
In a
disposal.
For disposal, yes, in a sealed vault. They didn't just dump it in the ground, just clarification.
All right. Well, the other question I have is because I had some involvement with the foam trailers in the state. Are those all up and running right now as far as you know?
2 out of the 6 or 7 foam trailers have done DEP's recommended drain, triple rinse and clean and filled back up. So only 2 are good to go.
All right.
And here's the problem, as I understand it from the state fire administrator, despite the draining and rinsing and mitigation efforts, they still can't really get it down below the tolerance level. It's close. It's in that right direction, but they're looking at replacing the foam trailers. It's just try to get that off the road.
Again, that's very concerning too. So if we have an incident with a cargo tanker or something like, which can happen anywhere, we're going to need that protection, that vapor suppression. Thank you both very much for coming in. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Johnson.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for your excellent testimony today. good to have both of you here and very thorough presentation. I do have a question, two questions actually. One is respect to the cost of, you obviously have insurance on the vehicles that you have. Is there an additional cost in your premiums to address the PFAS? In case there is an accident?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And there is a risk. I mean, there's a big community here in the state of Connecticut that went to a fire at a McDonald's and had an inadvertent release of foam. My understanding, the cleanup bill was $100,000. And so I guess that's borne by the local municipality's insurance policy. But I'm not aware of any extra riders or anything for foam.
Okay. And then the second question that I have, and that's something that we're looking at, and I think we need to probably continue to watch for this, but the Infrastructure Reduction Act, the IRA, that was passed by Congress last year or under the Biden administration, is supposed to address environmental issues. And I'm wondering, in terms of something that we should be looking into here, to see if we can see whether or not some of that is supposed to be for environment, it's supposed to be for infrastructure. It sounds to me like this is a place also where we should be looking to have these kinds of things addressed and have them taken care of, because it's obvious that if this is a national problem, that what's happened here is this has been something that's been approved without the necessary research before it was given to everybody throughout the country. And so if this is going on nationally, then there should be some help from the national government. So I just want to thank you so much for being here today and for being so explicit about your analysis and that. And I look forward to working with everybody here to try and make sure we look into the federal funds as well, because that IRA money should be there for us. So thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. And if we can help with any further questions down the road, and I say we, the fire service, John Crew is sitting behind me. He's going to wave his hand. He's up here a lot, and he'd be happy to research those questions and answers for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Up next is Coralie Santana. Coralie Santana. Christian Nelson. Christian Nelson. Are you Coralie? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Coralie.
Well, good afternoon, Chairwomen Austin and Walker, Ranking Members Bristol and Nuccio, Vice Chair Senator Hartley, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Coralie Santana. I'm a Policy and Program Associate with the Connecticut Project Action Fund, which is an emerging organization which mobilizes with our neighbors across Connecticut for policies that improve systems and advance real-world outcomes towards a just, thriving, and optimistic Connecticut. I am here to provide general comments on House Bill 6660, an act implementing the governor's budget recommendations for general government. We are respectfully asking that this body appropriate the necessary funding to implement early voting this election cycle. There are various proposals that are making their way through the legislative process, none of which address the cost of early voting. It is the responsibility of this body to make early voting accessible, make it fair, and make it count. And that means allocating the appropriate resources. If you value a healthy democracy, you must ensure that early voting is funded to include a minimum of 14 days, a minimum of 3 polling locations in our large cities. Polling locations are open evening and weekends, and multiple polling locations that are accessible to voters. A fair and accessible early voting framework requires resources to pay officials, educate voters, and run and operate elections securely in every municipality. You will hear that continuously for the duration of the session, and we are going to stand in solidarity with that message because we value our democracy, and this is a new right for your constituents across the state. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, are there any comments or questions? Senator Hartley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, Ms. Santana, welcome. No stranger to this building, having previously been around the corner with LA's. thank you for your testimony today and also your advocacy. It's an important proposal that's embedded in the budget. And as you know, that there are several bills circulating around the building about this. So we clearly are focused on it. And to try to bring, quite frankly, the state of Connecticut to the mainstream with the rest of the country, providing accessibility and means for everybody. I know in my own district, for example, that we continue to be challenged by voter turnout. And so in that respect, however we can facilitate participation, this being one way, I think it's very important. So thanks for your testimony and your advocacy on this. And we look forward to continuing to bring this process full circle. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Representative DiCaprio.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony. Can you just share, because I'm not really aware and haven't been following the other bills in the building, but the 14 days, when you say the minimum 14 days, what is it? Can you just share what your understanding is of the rationale for that?
Sure. So the Secretary of State did provide a report which kind of analyzed what other states do. The national average is 23, and that's the average. It can range anywhere from 3 to 46 days across the country. There are the three proposals, two of them, House Bill 5004 and Senate Bill 1064, offer 14 days of early voting and a lower threshold for special elections and referendums. And the rationale for that is if you have a longer window, people are more likely to utilize the early voting. If the window is too narrow, not enough people will take advantage of it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next is Christian Nelson. Christian Nelson. Derek Pearl. Derek,
Hi, I'm here.
go ahead. The floor is yours.
Chairman Walker, Chairman Austin, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Derek Piro. I am president of the Council for AFSCME Public Safety Council and a Middletown Police Lieutenant. Our union represents 1,900 municipal police officers. Our union is in favor of House Bill 5363, an act establishing an account to compensate families of law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty. Our union greatly appreciates this bill. The loss of our two brother officers, Lieutenant Dustin DeMonte and Sergeant William Hamsey, is fresh in our minds. These two outstanding Bristol police officers were killed in the line of duty last year. Lieutenant DeMonte and Sergeant Hamsey were well known in police ranks far beyond Bristol. They were greatly respected by their colleagues and their communities. They were also excellent family men. No doubt officers as young as these two men would have had a lifetime of earnings far in excess of current death benefits. This bill could be crafted to help their families take a bit less of a financial loss. We all know that there is no restoring the emotional and companionship loss suffered by their families. We saw a report written by the legislator's Office of Legislative Research. That report states that the current Massachusetts benefit for similar families is $300,000. As inflation and general living costs have increased, something higher is warranted. Our union wishes to offer its expertise and assistance in crafting a law that would establish a benefit that this bill suggests. AFSCME has a research department in Washington, D.C. that may also be of help. Thank you for your consideration. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Are there any comments or questions? Thank you. We really appreciate testimony. Thanks for coming and be safe out there.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Up next is Betsy Gara. Betsy, are you here? Up next is Joe Speech.
Spike, yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Chairs, vice chairs, ranking members, and members of the Appropriations Committee. I'm Joe Spike, Assistant Fire Chief for the Avon Volunteer Fire Department. And this testimony is in support of House Bill 5250. In 2021, the state passed Public Act 21-191, which banned the use of firefighting foams and intentionally added PFAS for vapor suppression. While we agree with the premise of this bill and this act, it has put an undue and unexpected financial burden on fire departments across the state. Fire departments had to decide whether to finance the recovery of foam concentrate containing PFAS or risk a fine and the cost of environmental cleanup in the event of a discharge deemed inappropriate by DEEP. To date, the Avon Fire Department has spent $25,000 on recovery and disposal of foam concentrate and anticipate further costs. Having this grant program will allow fire departments to recoup the cost of transitioning to a PFAS foam product that would comply with current state law. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the testimony, and should House Bill 5250 pass, we look forward to working with the state to get this program underway.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on the phone? I think we all agree. Representative Exum.
Hi, thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to say hello to Mr. Spike. He came out and, well, we went out to Avon and he informed us of this issue a little bit a couple months ago, well, probably half a year ago. And this was a new issue to me. I wasn't aware because of the impact, particularly on voluntary firefighting units, and to see that they had complied and then spent their money and then were in this situation was very problematic. So I think so many of us would support this, but I just want to thank you for coming out this afternoon, or and seeing you this afternoon, I should say. And thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? None. Thank you so much. Up next is we're going to go back to Evilise Korea. Evilise, come on up, Evilise.
Hey, there we go. Okay. Just whenever you guys are ready, I'll start, I guess.
No, you go. The floor is yours, ma'am.
All right, thank you. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me to speak today. Today, I will be supporting HB 6660, an act concerning the governor's budget. I come before the committee today requesting that the Appropriations Committee take the proper steps towards racial and socioeconomic equality, making sure we fully fund early voting. No municipality should struggle when taking these steps for voting. In 2019, the line to wait for a municipal election was 45 minutes in Hartford off Maple Avenue. In 2020, the line to vote for president in Asylum Hill was 4 hours. Before we pause to consider any costs or releasing these funds to municipalities, I need the committee to remember long lines only happen in Connecticut and the cities in which Black and brown residents were required to live in by law. This includes my own parents as toddlers. As long as there are disadvantages in voting where people were legally required to live, we should do everything we can to make sure they have unrestricted access to democracy and exercising their 15th and 19th Amendment rights. This is a small step towards democracy and equality. It is not a favor if these funds are released. It's the right thing to do. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any comments or questions? Evilise, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You guys have a nice day.
You too. Up next is Paula Bacalina. I'm sorry, Paula. Yep, there you go.
Hi, Senator Austin. I apologize too, because for all these years I've been saying your last name incorrectly. My name
I don't care anymore. It's just is what it is. Thank you, Paula. Appreciate it.
Senator Austin, and the distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. Thank you so much for hearing my testimony today. My name is Paula Bacalini, and I am the founder and leader of Make Voting Easy Connecticut, which is an organization of grassroots members of over 1,000 people across 95 towns and cities in Connecticut. And we are devoted to making voting more convenient and accessible. And to that end, we have volunteered countless hours over the last 6 years to advocate for the referendum on early voting, which passed in this past November with a 60% majority. And that would Connecticut is poised now to be the 47th state to allow early in-person voting. It's so important. I agree with the previous speakers. It is so important that the cities and the towns, the small towns and the large cities get extra funding to help make this happen. Please, I am urging you to fully and permanently fund the legislation to implement early voting. And please ensure that we have 14 days, 2 full weeks. And, you know, I know was asked earlier, but I also know that the population in Georgia is twice the population in Connecticut, and Georgia had 6 weeks of early voting. So 2 weeks is not too much to ask, I don't really feel. 2 weekends at least, Saturday and Sunday, early morning hours, late evening hours, and provide the funding to educate voters where and how to vote early. We do need to make sure that there's funding for hiring and training additional poll workers, additional part-time registrars and town clerks to help the smaller towns and the larger cities. And also to make sure that at least one polling place in each municipality has transportation access. Early voting is so important. And as a senior citizen myself and my own personal health issues, I really appreciate the ability to vote on a day when the weather is definitely good or when I'm actually feeling well and I can actually get to the polls and avoid the long lines. The previous speaker who said that in the cities, the lines were 4 hours, this is definitely unacceptable in Connecticut. So, you know, I don't think anybody should be asked to wait that long online. And when I vote, I don't have to wait that long. So please do everything that you can. And thank you again for all your years of help with this new voting reform.
Thanks, Paula. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Paula. Have a nice day.
You too. Thank you.
Up next is Jim Murray. Is Jim Murray here? Eric George. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Senator Austin. Representative Walker, members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Eric George. I'm the president of the Insurance Association of Connecticut. I'm here today to ask you to support Senate Bill 1217, which concerns payments by insurance companies for deposit into the insurance fund. This bill would realign certain insurance company assessments so they are funded by those insurers that have more of a nexus to the work related to certain state agencies rather than insurers that have no nexus to those state agencies. I'd like to point out that it is a revenue neutral bill and it is not opposed by the health insurers in Connecticut. As you probably know, the insurance fund is used to fund the operations of the Department of Insurance, and this is very similar to how other departments of insurance are funded across the country. Our insurance fund also is used to fund the operations of the Office of Health Strategies and the Office of Healthcare Advocate. I would like to say that the work that those two agencies do is extremely valuable, it is laudable, and it is connected to public health, health insurance, and at least ostensibly to health insurers. As the Insurance Association of Connecticut, we represent the auto, home, and life insurers in Connecticut. And there's not a causal or a nexus between what the two agencies, OHS and OHA, do and auto, home, and life. A while ago, the General Assembly decided to have the operational costs for these agencies taken out of the general fund and put into the insurance fund. And if that continues to be the will of the General Assembly, we ask that those costs be borne by the appropriate parties, or the parties that are at least more appropriate. I think there's an argument to be made that they probably would made sense to have them in the general fund. But again, if it is your will to keep them in the insurance fund, they should be paid for by the insurers who are more nexused or connected to the work of those agencies. Again, it is revenue neutral. It is not opposed by the health insurers in Connecticut. We ask you to support it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Are there any questions? So I'm gonna ask one question, if you know the answer to the question. When we put assessments on industry like that, is that assessment put directly on the people who get the policies?
It is an assessment that is mailed to the domestic insurance companies. And it shows what the assessments are used for the operations for DOI, and then the parts of it that'll go to OHS, OHA. There are other uses for the assessment as well. And that is all explained in the annual letter that is delivered, but it goes directly to the carrier.
And does that carrier then pass those expenses for that assessment onto the policy holders?
Every company, every business that I know of has to deal with the cost that they are required to pay through their business operations.
So some may, but some may not.
Have I polled my members to ask them if they've done that? No. Would I? Probably not, for antitrust reasons.
Okay.
But I would say that whenever a tax or a surcharge is levied on a producer of widgets, the end consumer of that widget will be paying the cost of it.
Thank you. There's one more person who has a question right now. Representative Dillon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for your testimony. It's very timely. The original assessment, which affected vaccines, actually the industry believed was a net positive for a number of reasons. When you made your suggestion today, were there particular assessments that are at issue, or is it simply the progression of increasing the assessments?
Thank you very much, Representative Dillon. There are actually, we are not objecting to the overall assessment. We understand that fluctuates from year to year. It is the realignment of the assessment just for the agencies that we think it should be better borne by the insurers who deal with those types of insurance, those areas. There's just not a connection between life and property and casualty and the workings of OHS and OHA. Again, I cannot stress strong enough. The work of OHS and OHA is laudable. This will not reduce their budgets in any way.
Okay, we'll look at that a little bit more, but I really appreciate your being here. It's helpful.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Up next is Hamish McPhail. Is Hamish here? Okay. All right, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Co-Chair Senator Austin and Representative Walker and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Hamish McPhail. I am the Policy and Research Director for CONCAN, a statewide education advocacy organization. And today I am here to testify on Senate Bill 109, an act concerning accountability for expenditure of federal coronavirus relief funds received by the state. So the state of Connecticut, its municipalities, and all school districts received once in a generation federal grants funds due to the coronavirus pandemic. Focusing on education, the American Rescue Plan provided $1.1 billion to the state, with over $990 million of those dollars going directly to school districts. The funds could be used for a wide variety of programs, facilities, investments, and staffing. And this is welcome news for our state. However, CONCAN believes that more should be done to ensure that those funds are correctly spent, and that the results of the grant program are publicly reported at the conclusion of the grant period. Only then can the public fully understand the impact, success, and limitations of the grant money that's provided to school districts. The State Department of Education has done a good job evaluating the ARP ESSER grant applications for each district, and they've made those applications available on their website. The transparency sets us apart from many other states who actually struggle with any transparency in that sense. Yet, once those grant funds are approved, how can we know that they're spent in accordance with the law? And what are the outcomes associated with those plans for our children, given that this is $990 million? We must know how the funding impacts student outcomes, and each district actually reports what those outcomes are going to be based on the funds that they have. What we ask is that this bill includes school districts in the financial district reporting and outcome reporting, because it matters so much that kids have access to equitable and excellent educations. And we know that this funding was utilized to help ensure that those things happen. So we just want to make sure that what districts say they are planning to do, we're able to get done, and what are the limitations or successes that we can point to that are going to be good data points moving forward for us to be able to have maybe changes in what educational programming we offer kids. So there's a lot to be learned from them. I provided recommended language in my testimony, which I submitted, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any Representative Walker? Or
Uh,
Representative Porter?
Thank you. Thank you, Hamish, for your testimony. Can you give us an idea of what your language says that you've recommended?
Yes, of course, I just exited out of it. But essentially what it says is that that districts at the end of the ARP ESSER time period, which is September of 2024, thereafter, they have to report on the outcomes of that grant to the State Department of Education within a certain time frame, which I think we allocate as 30 days from the that can be negotiable based on the ability for districts to do it. But to make those reports available for the public viewing, and to make sure that they're aligned with the goals that the district outlined from the onset of their grant application. Each district had to get their ARP ESSER plans approved by the state with priority goals outlined, that we're going to increase our math accountability index by X% over 3 years. We're going to reduce our chronic absenteeism by Y% over 3 to 5 years. So just to report essentially on those goals and to say, did you do it? Did you not do it? Why didn't you do it? Why did you do it? How'd you get it done? Did you make it course corrections? So it creates a process to ensure that all school districts, all school types have to abide by that. But we think it's another layer of accountability and also transparency for the public to be able to make that connection.
Thank you, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think there are a couple of other bills. I think SB 1 may be in that direction also. So I think you've got a very valid point that we keep asking for more money, but we never seem to know exactly where the money is going. And with these dollars, there were $990 million was a lot, especially when people had things like HVAC and then also after school programming and things like that to engage the kids. So I think you've got a great idea, and I look forward to hearing more people support this. Thank you.
Representative Porter?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Walker went exactly where I was going. I was curious because you did state that, there should be some things included, and you wanted to make sure that it includes. So that did answer the question that I had for you. So I just want to thank you for your commitment to the education, the quality of education of children in the state of Connecticut, and we certainly will do our due diligence to follow the money. That has been the task at hand. It hasn't been easy, but it certainly is warranted when we're talking about almost $1 billion. So thank you.
Thanks, Representative Porter. I appreciate that. And the beauty of this is that it's already, almost all the work has already been done. They've already set up their goals. They've already had allocated the money. They're already doing the programs. Presumably, a lot of that money is being expended. So it's just a matter of tying a bow on it, making sure that the public is aware of it, and making sure that people feel confident that the money was put to good use. Which in a lot of, I have no proof that it won't be, but we won't know that, and the public won't know that until it's stated for the public to see.
Absolutely. Transparency is important, and outcomes are even more important. So We need to make sure that those funds are actually delivering on what it is that's been promised to the children and parents in this state. So thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Hamish. Appreciate it.
Have a good one, everyone.
You too. Up next is Jessica Beckstrand. Jessica,
Hello,
the floor is yours.
thank you so much. Hello, Madam Chairs, Vice Chairs, and Ranking Members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Jessica Beckstrand, and I'm the Director of the What About Kids Research Initiative with the American Childhood Cancer Organization. We are a nationwide childhood cancer nonprofit that has been around for over 50 years. Thank you for letting me be here today to talk about House Bill 5531, an act concerning the childhood cancer account. I am also a mom to 2 children, one of whom is a childhood cancer survivor. My daughter Layla was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma at 18 months old. And what that means is that she had a football-sized tumor in her belly that had metastasized into all the major bones in her body. For 18 months, we underwent the most horrific treatments you could ever imagine, and I held her hand, wiped her tears, and cuddled her throughout the entire process. We were given a 50-50 chance of survival in the beginning, and I'm happy to say that she is now 9 years old and in what we call survivorship, 6 years cancer-free. However, that does not mean that there are no complications. Unfortunately, with children, the longer they live, the more long-term side effects that they will have. Layla has hearing loss from chemo, scar tissue that won't heal on her liver because of radiation, and she will most likely battle another cancer in her near future. We constantly have to monitor her heart, her organs, and her growth. Suffice it to say, I am fully invested in making our childhood cancer community a better place. So what I say is, what about kids? Through HB 5531, I know Connecticut can lead the country in implementing state funding for pediatric cancer research. Together, we can make a difference for kids with cancer and expand the research so there is less toxic treatments, less long-term side effects, and more survivors. Connecticut ranks number 7 in the country for incidence rates, number 2 for pediatric lymphoma, and number 6 for pediatric sarcomas. 2 Connecticut counties are showing higher incidence rates for pediatric cancer than the national average. That's Litchfield and Middlesex, according to cancer.gov. Connecticut also has higher mortality rates than the national average. States have the opportunity to make up the disparity in pediatric cancer research funding. ACCO is taking the lead on securing state funding, which we have successes in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Kentucky, Maryland, and Virginia. The money raised at the state level stays in the state and benefits state-based research, resources, and education for the children fighting cancer in the state. The appropriations that ACCO has secured since 2018 in 5 states equals to $72.4 million. More than half of that has been in the last 2 years. My life has been divided before pediatric cancer and after. And unfortunately, my daughter won't have the opportunity to know what it's like not to have cancer in her life, not to have doctors monitoring her, not to have that sense of normalcy that every other kid gets to have. And I'm thankful that she gets an after cancer. And I am also determined to make an impact for those fighting today and those who will be in the fight in the future. So please help me to make a difference for them with House Bill 5531. Thank you for your time and consideration today, and I will stand by for any questions that you may have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. A couple people have questions. Representative Nolan, followed by Representative Sims.
Jessica, thank you for coming before us for us in regards to this. Your advocacy is so important.
Thank you.
And I am sure that you're going to garnish a lot of support in regards to this topic that a lot of us are finding out about and trying to help people deal with. So your advocacy, please continue to do so. And please send us emails so we have your contact in regards to your testimony. And once again, prayers for your family in regards to continued strength and good health for your child. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Sims, followed by Senator Marks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jessica, for coming before us today and sharing your compelling story. I felt compelled to say something about this, and you know, it's never hard to talk about your children when they're going through their adversity, especially with childhood cancer. You know, and I just want to wish you and your family the greatest luck and in the future, and your daughter continue success with health. And you know, and as a father, I just want to make sure that I make myself clear that, you know, I will be fully supporting this bill as we move forward. So thank you again, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Marks.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Ms. Beckstrand. It's nice to see you again. And the young woman who, when I met you, she testified earlier. My second job in nursing was at Memorial Sloan Kettering on their pediatric floor, like I told you. And neuroblastoma kids didn't walk out of that when they came back in. So the advances that we've made in pediatric oncology are incredible, but where Connecticut stands with pediatric oncology is actually very surprising to me and sad. I'm surprised we don't have a line item for pediatric cancer. What do other states contribute to, you know, right now there's no money in the line item. Can you tell me what you think would be a number that would impact research? Because like I said, I mean, I probably worked at Sloan in 1988, 89, probably 88. And the neuroblastoma kids were getting one bone marrow transplant. And now I believe you said they're getting back to back, which if you've ever, I will never forget those kids and what they went through and what the parents go through. So what do you think would be an appropriate amount in that line item?
For Connecticut, based off of the research that's being done at Connecticut Children's, Yale New Haven's, I was talking to Representative Gilchrist and Cavros DeGraw about between $2 and $3 million. And that would assist those two hospitals in doubling or tripling the amount of research resources and education that those two hospitals can do in just 1 year's amount of time. And so if we can continue that also year after year, which is what so many other states, well, 5 other states are doing, I should say. And then we have 5 bills going in this fiscal year as well. So I'm hoping to get more support there. But I think between $2 and $3 million is a good number to start out with. This is what Kentucky started out with many years ago. They've been able to appropriate $22.5 million so far over the last 6 years. New Jersey has done $25 million over the last 2 years, and Pennsylvania has done $17.5 million over the last 2 fiscal years. So those are just some similar examples to your state.
Thank you for that. And thank you for your advocacy. You're doing great work.
Thank you, Senator Marks.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you very much. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Up next is Randy Collins. Randy, floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Randy Collins with the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. Here today to testify very briefly on a few bills. The first one I wanted to speak in support of is Senate Bill 1213, an act concerning the Mashantucket, Pequot, and Mohegan Fund. This bill would increase current funding for municipalities from the Mashantucket, Pequot, and Mohegan Fund from $51 million to $139 million. Right now, the fund is at its lowest level since I believe 1994, when it was at $88 million, significantly down from over the years. Additionally, CCM supports the language in Section 1, Sub B, which would provide predictability and protect that funding by limiting the ability to reduce it by the governor unless with a state of emergency declaration or a 2/3 vote of the General Assembly. This is what this money was intended for when the fund was initially created. We see many of our municipalities, especially host municipalities in Eastern Connecticut, that have seen that funding dramatically increase while the responsibilities of being partners with those tribal nations continue to increase. So this is a very welcome bill. It would provide needed support for our towns and cities. Just briefly wanted to mention 5250 regarding a grant program for PFAS removal. I know you've heard a lot of testimony. CCM is in strong support of that. And then lastly, just on Governor's Budget 6660, CCM continues to have concerns over some of the changes to the proposed changes in the way that municipal aid would be structured. Continue to look forward to working with the committee and the governor's office to understand the intent and the thoughts behind reconsolidating those in the municipal revenue sharing fund. We support the language regarding illegal notices, long time priority for CCM. And we do have some concerns over in sections 28 and 29 regarding school construction. I think more concerning was in section 29, which all of a sudden would grant the OPM secretary almost unilateral authority to alter the recommendations from the Department of Education on school construction projects. Right now, he can raise comments, concerns for review, but this looks like it would allow him to unilaterally alter that process, and that's something that we would have some questions about before it went forward. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Randy. Are there any comments or questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your support.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. We had a few people that weren't here before. I just wanted to let people know that Senator Kelly said that he had a personal matter he had to deal with today, was unable to come in to testify. Is Representative Cavros DeGraw here?
Madam Chair, she's chairing another committee or at this time she can't do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Exum. Olivia Rinks, Christian Nelson, Betsy Gara, Jim Murray. Seeing as none of them are here, is there anybody here that has not testified? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing for March 24th. Everybody have a nice day.